guys, and welcome back to the Road New Yorkshire. Welcome back to some Formula E related content on the channel. It's been a little while, but Formula E is back, and so am I, of course. So I thought, what better way to start the season off with, or pre-season, of course, just before the weekend kicks off in Mexico. I thought, let me do my predictions on how I feel the Constructors Championship will be by the end of the season. How right or wrong will I be? Yeah, it's going to be a tough one to predict this, but I've looked at the season testing that they had, of course, in October, the pre-season test. I've looked at what the driver lineup is at each team. There's a couple of teams that are unchanged, but quite a few have got returning drivers, and a lot of teams have swapped their drivers around between each other. And of course, there's just one official rookie on the grid as well to start the season off with. So I've sort of combined everything together based on the pace of how they were last season as well, and I've come up with this list of how I feel the Formula E teams will finish at the end of the season. So yeah, Formula 1 was difficult to predict, and I sometimes get that right or wrong, but Formula E I feel is going to be even more trickier to get right, because not only is there an extra team to contend with, of course, 22 cars on the field, but you've also got to bear in mind the chaotic and erraticness of Formula E, which is, of course, the energy usage per car, per team, per driver as well, the tyre usage of the cars, as well as the just general chaos that Formula E stills upon us. You know, you get a wet race and all of a sudden the cars that are normally at the back go right to the front. You have shock podiums, shock victories at times, and some hefty collisions as well. So it's all got to be put into my mental arithmetic in my head, which I'm very, very bad at anyway, and I've conducted and calculated that this is how I feel the Formula E teams will finish at the end of the season. So yeah, we're going to go through the list from 11th to 1st, and at the end of it, let me know if you think I'm right, wrong, whatever in the comments below, and put your predictions as well, where you feel the teams are going to finish. I'm not going to put the drivers. Wow, 22 drivers in Formula E, where every one of them has realistically got a chance of scoring points multiple times throughout a year. Going to be a bit chaotic to do that, but no, I've gone for teams only, so let's kick things off. So in 11th place, I have gone for the formerly named Neo team, ERT Racing, or ERT. I don't know how it's pronounced just yet, but it's a ERT Racing team. This is, of course, got an unchanged driver lineup of Dan Tinctum and Sergio Sette Camara. They were a team last year that punched above the weight at times with some good one-off results for Sette Camara. A 5th place in India was his most notable effort, and Dan Tinctum was their regular point scorer, often picking up some great qualifying results and some good race result finishes as well. Finishing inside the points quite often, he did quite a good job. From what we've seen in testing though, of course, not everyone shows their true figures and true light in testing, but there was one thing that was very apparent from day one, which was the fact that the ERT Racing squad with both drivers were always at the bottom of the standings. Yeah, and also, you know, the results at the end of it were quite close. Admittedly, I'm not saying they're miles away from anyone else, but there was still a good 3 or 4 tenths off like the next car, which was an Apt or Mahindra. So yeah, for me personally, I feel that although I'm sure Dan Tinctum will get the most out of the car, Sette Camara has been known to be a bit of a wild card, and he was very disappointing last season, throughout most of the season, it must be said. Did pick up a few crucial points finishes, but it was very lacklustre and few and far between. Dan Tinctum, the more consistent driver, I feel will deliver the results if an opportunity arises, but I don't feel like we're going to see what we saw last year with the Neo team. I don't think we're going to see these impressive qualifying performances. I don't think the races are going to come their way. I don't think there's going to be races where the car is genuinely a top 10 contender. I think we're going to see them a lot further down the field this season in the hands of Dan Tinctum and Sette Camara. And yeah, for the most part, I do feel that both drivers will score points throughout the season, but I think they're going to be last of the standings, a bit like Apt were last season is how I would call them for this season. I think there's going to be points coming. There might be an odd good result here and there, but it's not going to be enough to elevate them from the bottom of the standings. So yeah, in 11th place, I have gone for ERT Racing. In 10th place, I have placed Mahindra. Of course, we know Mahindra had a difficult season last year, and this doesn't look to have changed going into 2024. A new driver lineup for them, realistically, with Eduardo Mortara switching from Maserati, and the returning Nick de Vries, of course, leaving for his Formula One venture that abruptly ended, but he's back now in Formula E with the Mahindra squad. It was a bit of a shocking and surprising result, really, to see Nick de Vries here. Everyone was tipping him to get the Maserati seat, and for Jahan Daruvella to be in the Mahindra seat, of course, an Indian driver with an Indian-backed team would have made more sense, but obviously contracts are contracts, payments are payments, and Nick de Vries have taken his spot at the Mahindra team. Of course, although Nick de Vries is a Formula E champion and has delivered some cracking results for his Mercedes venture previous to his Formula 1, he's never driven Gen 3. The most he's done is the testing we've seen in winter testing. So as he comes into this season, despite the fact I am expecting good things from Nick de Vries, I do think he's going to take a few races to get up to speed, and he's effectively a rookie within the field. He isn't the actual rookie, but he would be classed as one in my eyes. You know, everyone else has got at least a season's experience on him. You know, there's 20 other cars out there that have all got 1 year's experience with the Gen 3. Nick de Vries hasn't got that, so he will take a few races to adjust to that. Not to mention as well, of course, that once he does get up to speed, I don't think the Mahindra is going to be regularly contending for points. I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle. I do feel that Nick de Vries could put in some impressive performances, though, and I think he will get the points eventually. You know, I think points will come, races will fall his way. I think, certainly judging by the pace of things, Eduardo Mortara has shown quite good pace in the winter testing, but he could be giving it everything, and other teams still holding back, of course. Eduardo Mortara, will he settle into Mahindra? I think he will. He has been known to be a great driver, and he has had some impressive performances in seasons gone by, almost becoming champion just a few seasons ago as well. If it wasn't for Evans stalling in front of him, he could have driven round him. We could have seen him being crowned a Formula E champion. So last season at Maserati was really a fall from grace for Eduardo, it must be said. Difficult one for him. Will he pick himself up and dust himself down, or will he keep remaining an absolute shunt monster and constantly crashing and causing silly errors, silly mistakes and poor pace? It's all to remain unseen, but for now I've put Mahindra in a cautious 10th place due to what could be Mortara's erraticness and Nick de Vries' time to get back up to speed in Formula E and with the Gen 3 car. If I'm proven wrong, and Mortara has settled well with the team and does deliver some impressive performances, and Nick de Vries doesn't take as long as I'm expecting him to get up to speed, I could easily see Mahindra finishing as high as maybe 8th in the standings, but for now I've cautiously placed him 10th on the fact of what we've seen previously. In 9th place I have gone for Abt Cupra. So, of course, Abt Cupra finished last in the standings last year in 11th place. A good number of points away from 10th as well. So no matter the good results that they did have towards the end of the season, it wasn't enough to overall them any other than last in the standings. Of course, Lucas Di Grassi joins the Abt squad once again. He was there previously during their Audi venture, and Abt Cupra, of course, now have taken him back. So I'm expecting Lucas Di Grassi to do quite well with that team, it must be said. And, of course, Nico Muller remains unchanged from the previous season. So Nico Muller has familiarity with the team, of course. He has familiarity with the car as well. And Lucas Di Grassi, I am expecting him to do quite well. I am expecting them to be the Abt's saving grace. You know, like Mahindra last season, that podium that came at Mexico, the first round, we thought the Mahindra car was actually decent. And then when it looked at it the rest of the season, you're like, well, hang on a minute, it's not actually that good at all. But Di Grassi drove incredibly well that race. I think we could see another one of those performances, maybe even two of those performances with the 16-round calendar ahead of us. I think Di Grassi will be Abt's saving grace this season, and I'm not saying anything stunning or startling is going to happen. I think the car is obviously relatively unchanged compared to last season, where it finished last in the standings, but I'm expecting Nico Muller to be a bit more comfortable in the car, score the points that he was scoring towards the end of last season, and I'm expecting Lucas Di Grassi to be up there, qualifying inside the top 15, somewhere around there, to give him the opportunity to get inside the points a little bit more regularly and be that shining light that Abt need. I really do think he's going to come through and deliver the goods is Lucas Di Grassi. And delivering the goods, and I'm only saying 9th in the Constructors, I know, but I'm expecting that these Mahindra powertrain cars are just further down the field. It's just a fact of life, unfortunately, for them. And yeah, there's not going to be any change from last season to this. I just think there's going to be a general shuffling at the back of the grid. So yeah, for me personally, Abt Cupra, 9th in the standings overall. Lucas Di Grassi will do really well at some races where it's suited to him, the car will be suited to him, and he'll just dial it up. Nico Muller going to be consistently inside the points when he can be. Not going to be anything special or spectacular, but will be solid, and that is where it's going to make the difference for them finishing 9th compared to 11th last year. In 8th place, I have placed McLaren, Neon McLaren, of course. Now, their venture in Formula E started off quite strongly last season, but then tailed away as the season went on. You know, we were expecting more podiums from those drivers, and they just didn't happen, did they, unfortunately, with Rene Rast and Jake Hughes. Jake Hughes remains for a second season, so he's no longer the rookie of the field. And Jake put in some good performances, especially towards the latter end of the season where the car faded away. He was unlucky a lot at times as well. He was always the one that you saw with a bit of damage here and there, and was always getting involved in silly accidents that weren't always his fault. I think he'll settle down now going into the next season, and I think he will do well. And alongside him is no longer Rene Rast, it is Sam Bird. Now, I don't know what Sam Bird's doing there either, to be honest with you. Everyone else will be groaning behind the camera, I am sure. But yeah, for me personally, Sam Bird really didn't prove his worth at all, didn't prove why he should be staying in Formula E at all last season, taking his teammate out twice, ridiculously poor performances. Yeah, some podiums here and there, but that car was a championship contender and Sam Bird was nowhere in it in that Jaguar last season. So for me personally, you know, single-handedly cost his teammate the title, certainly to cost himself a realistic shot at the title anyway. Mitch Evans, of course, being taken out twice by your teammate whilst in strong positions, on for potential podiums and top 5 finishes. Not acceptable. And then the fact that he wasn't even up there, Sam Bird himself, the odd good race here and there and the odd good podium didn't say to me that Sam Bird deserved this shot at McLaren when there's so many good drivers that could be in Formula E and could personally, you know, save their career effectively. That's what Formula E has been for those drivers that can't get into Formula 1. Formula E has been quite a good stalwart to be able to get those drivers in and give them a career that they wouldn't otherwise have had, and I think Sam Bird is taking up a seat now. So for me personally, I think McLaren will have a car strong enough for the top 6 in the standings, but I feel Sam Bird is going to cost him. I think he's going to be in the wall. Not like Mortara, where we saw good races from him and consistency from him, and you think, right, there's potential there. Sam Bird has been off the boil for quite a while, almost the Daniel Ricciardo of Formula 1, really. And I can't see him getting out of that rut anytime soon. So Jake Hughes, the consistent point scorer for McLaren. Sam Bird, the consistent shunter for him, and that's what's going to cost him. In 7th place, we have placed Maserati. I've gone for Maserati here. So, of course, Maxi Gunter stays yet again for another season with them. Max Gunter had a very difficult start to the year. He really did. He was shunting just as much as Mortara, if not more so. You know, he was really pushing too hard. The amount of times that those Maserati cars missed races because they had such a big crash in qualifying was unacceptable at times. And, you know, Gunter did recover it though. The second half of that season was ridiculously strong. Regular podiums, a victory as well, of course, and regular top 5 finishes. He did a solid job towards the end of the season, did Maxi Gunter. So if he can carry that momentum that he ended the season with going into next season, I'm sure absolutely points will be possible for him regularly. I think the odd podium will be there as well. I think if he can knuckle down and start the season exactly as he finished last season, he will do really well. His teammate alongside him, the first official and only official rookie on the grid this season, is Jahan Daruvella, of course, the Indian driver, switching from Formula 2 to Formula E. Be interesting to see how he gets on. Again, he's at a disadvantage, a bit like Nick De Vries. Everyone else on that grid has had an entire season to get used to the Gen 3 era. Jahan Daruvella, apart from a few days testing, is going to be relatively new to it. So the first few races are just effectively going to be test days for him to knuckle down, get used to the usage, get used to racing inside the pack and to save the energy, things like that. It's one thing to test where you've got no percentage against you. You know, you haven't got that ability to be like, oh, okay, well, it doesn't matter because I've got as much battery as I need. No, you've got that to use and that only. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Daruvella gets on. He will probably struggle initially for the first few races and you know, I'll certainly allow him time with that on the Cruel Corner series to get up to speed. Maxi Gunter, I think, will be solid. I think Jahan Daravella, once he gets himself up to speed, will be good, because he's been looking at Formula E for quite a number of years now and has always said that if the opportunity arose, that's where he'd switch. The Formula 1 dream isn't realistic anymore. So once he gets up to speed, I think he will be scoring points. I think he'll do a solid job. And Maxi Gunter, if he can iron out the issues that he had at the start of last season, completely eradicate those, he's on for a really good season as well. I've cautiously placed him 7th, because I think even if Max Gunter is doing well and delivering the goods, I think that Jahan Daravella will be letting the team down in terms of a point scoring position for quite a few races just to get up to speed. But I'm sure Maserati are aware of that. Daravella's aware of that. It's just about nurturing him in the first few races, keeping his confidence going, keeping his levels of spirit up, and just getting him there to eventually get into those points. And I think once he scores the points, he'll continue to do so. So yeah, for me personally, I think the car maybe realistically could be a top 5 finisher, but with the lineup they've got, an inexperienced rookie, it's a bit of against them. I've placed him a cautious 7th. In 6th place, we have gone for Nissan. I've placed Nissan in 6th position. Now, the reason for that is, of course, Sasha Fenestras had some good rookie performances last year and has now got a full season of Gen 3 under his belt, a whole season of Formula E, a whole season of knowledge is certainly perfect. And not only that, he's staying with the same team as well, which will certainly boost his confidence. A bit like Jake Hughes, really. I think he's going to go into this season a lot more confident, a lot more able to deliver the goods and be more consistent with it. His teammate is the returning Ollie Rowland, of course. Last season he left unceremoniously from Mahindra, be it him sacked or he left or however it worked out. I think it was more a case of please leave before you get sacked as well, perhaps, with the Mahindra squad. You know, Ollie Rowland was incredibly defeated last season with how poor the Mahindra was, so great to see him get an opportunity at Nissan, a manufacturer squad. Ollie Rowland has shown brilliance in Formula E at times. He has been really, really good and putting cars that sometimes haven't really got the ability to be where it is. He's put some solid performances in. He has been known to be a bit erratic at times. Monaco last season was a really scruffy race for him, but after so many good overtakes and so many impressive moves, he then goes and overdoes it and causes collateral damage effectively and takes himself out of a race. So if he can make the moves he makes to gain the positions, then absolutely fantastic, but he just needs to know when a move isn't quite on at times to not take himself or anyone else out of the race. I've placed him in 6th place mainly because I think that Sasha Fenestras is going to be a regular point scorer without a doubt. The Nissan was able to do that from time to time last season. There were certain races where they just totally tumbled off the pace and were at the back of the grid. But then sometimes in those races where they weren't very good over a single lap, over the race pace, they're able to climb the way back through again. So I think next season's just all about being more consistent for Fenestras. I think Ollie Rowland's going to be certainly a lot more positive to be in a bit more of a front-running field car. I certainly don't think it's going to be regular podium contender, but I think some good, strong qualifying performances could yield them regular top 5 finishes, top 6, top 10 at the very worst. So yeah, I feel they need to be 6th for that reason. And yeah, Ollie Rowland, a welcome back to him. He's going to be positive, he's going to be looking strong, and I think he's got a point to prove. Sasha Fenestras, 2nd season, more comfortable in the car. A regular points finishing for both of them, really. In 5th place, I have gone for DS Penske. Yes, last season was a little bit of a missed season for him, wasn't it? It must be said. Jean-Eric Vergne getting a lot more acclimatised to the DS Penske than his teammate Stoffel van Dorn. But now, you know, both drivers are certainly accustomed to the team. They've got used to the team. Going into the 2nd season, you know, cars virtually the same as last season as well, of course. I think these drivers are going to do well. I'm going to be tipping podium finishes for them. Maybe not regularly, but certainly going to be enough to keep them inside the points fight for maybe the top 5 in the championship, which is why they are 5th. But I do think ultimately they're going to have some races where they're going to get as high as 3rd in the Constructors, maybe something like that. Maybe 2nd if there's a wild race. But I think ultimately they're just not going to have the pace compared to the 4 ahead that I've placed in positions. And I do feel that they will just slip away ever so slightly. Those races where the DS Penske wasn't quite up there, wasn't quite as willing to be as fighty at the front as it usually is. You know, those races where they're only going to be scraping a couple of points while the teams ahead are going to be well inside those big points finishing positions inside the top 5, top 6. So yeah, for me personally, Jean-Eric Vergne, Stoffel van Dorn, an absolutely fantastic driver lineup. I'd give Jean-Eric Vergne the overall edge for delivering the more podiums between them. Maybe one win 2 wins to come as well. Stoffel Vandoorne, I do think he'll be a lot more up to speed than he was last season. I'd certainly like to see him a lot more consistent as well, of course. You know, both drivers need to work together. They're in that sort of phase where they're like, look, we can have good results, but we do need to work together. The ultimate goal, I don't think, will be the championship just yet for them, as much as they would love to get another one each, let's face it. I do think that we're in that sort of let's work together, let's push the team forward kind of scenario. They'll both do that well, but I just think they need to be closer on track together to be able to get those results and push each other forward quite literally on the track, not just in the briefing room. So yeah, for me personally, Jean-Eric Vergne, I'm tipping at least 1 win from him, a few regular podiums as well. Stoffel Vandoorne, if he can get himself up to speed, there's no reason why he can't have a win or 2 as well. Maybe even a few podiums to go with that win as well. But if he's just not quite off the pace, I think that is what's going to ultimately cost him, and only finishing 5th in the standings. In 4th place, I have placed Andretti. Yes, Andretti are here in 4th place, and you'll think, bloody hell, Josh, that is quite harsh. They finished 3rd last season, and they had André Lotterer alongside Jake Dennis. So yes, I am aware of that. But this season, I think it's going to be more about everyone else getting their act together a little bit better than Andretti. You know, Andretti had some bad spells of races. Jake Dennis getting all the bad luck, of course, as well at times. Had a string of pointless races, which were really disappointing to see. And I don't think this season they can afford that. Andretti, for me personally, I don't think they're going to take a step back in terms of performance. I do think they will just be on par with how they were last season. Norman Nato alongside Jake Dennis now, who has been known to be a regular point scorer, a consistent point scorer, and on his day, a really good race winner. You know, he has been known to be a good race winner at times. Norman Nato is certainly a more solid option compared to André Lotterer. Jake Dennis will be doing everything possible to give himself another world title, of course, in the Formula E. But I do feel that the teams ahead that I have placed ahead have overall got a substantial advantage in terms of consistency within the championship from a team's perspective. And I do feel that they're going to be ironing out the mistakes that they have made previously, as well as the fact that I do feel that although Jake Dennis will be giving it his all and Norman Nato has been known to be a race winner on a good day, I still think Norman Nato regularly inside the top 10 isn't going to be enough when Jake Dennis maybe only be picking 3rds and 4ths up this season, I do feel, overall. So yeah, Andretti, I'm expecting him to have a great season overall. I'm expecting Jake Dennis to be in the championship contention, but I feel these other teams that are placed ahead are going to be the ones to watch. So yeah, for me personally, Andretti a harsh 4th. Let's see how right or wrong I am at the end of the season. But yeah, it is a tough one to take. Jake Dennis, absolutely stunning driver. Norman Nato, great on his day, a regular point scorer, but I don't think it'll just be enough. In 3rd place, I have placed Envision. Now, this one could be seen as a bit controversial as to why Andretti aren't 3rd and, you know, Envision 4th. But Sebastian Buemi was wildly unlucky last season not to do any better than he actually did. He had some great performances at the start of the season, was consistently inside the points when he was, but he was the one that had all the bad luck. And that bad luck's got to run out at some point, hasn't it? And I think 2024 is going to be Sebastian Buemi's season. Get himself on the top step of the podium again, get himself some regular points finishes, regular podiums as well, of course. And I think Sebastian Buemi will have a solid season. As for his teammate, of course, no longer Nick Cassidy, it is Robin Frijns, and he will be hungry like the wolf to get some fantastic performances back in after a tough season with that Cooper last year as well, of course. Breaking his wrist, let's not forget that, at the first round, and then missing countless races before he finally got back in to the car. So yeah, Robin Frijns, back with Envision, back where he belongs. A great team. He's had great success with them in the past as well. I think that is a match made in heaven, and he's realised that now. He realises that, no, stick with what I know. Stick with the team I know. And I think Robin Frijns will have a point to prove, and I think he's going to be very, very consistent. I think he's going to be the one that's going to be getting those good pole position lap times. You know, top couple of rows will be filled with Envision. I think the first 3 rows you're going to see both Envision cars in. If they're outside that, I'm going to say it's disappointing for me personally. Envision for me have certainly got history and heritage within the championship. They've got all the knowledge that the other teams have as well. Been there from the start. The drivers are well experienced. Sebastian Buemi been in since season 1. Robin Frijns has been in from quite early on as well, hasn't he? Still the Gen 1 era, was it, that Robin Frijns came in? So yeah, you know, you've got 2 drivers there, both hungry for success. The team that is able to give them that, and I just think a little bit more luck each driver's way, which they're certainly due it. I think we could be seeing some good victories, some strong podiums, and some great point finishes from both drivers this season for them. So yeah, Envision, 3rd place overall. I think it'll be close between them and Andretti at the end of the season, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I think Envision will just edge it. In 2nd place, we have Porsche. Now, I think it's going to be a much improved season for Porsche overall after how much they dominated the start of that season with the hands of Pascal Wehrlein, especially. Da Costa's putting in some fantastic overtakes and moves as well, of course, to score some outstanding victories and podiums. Both drivers there didn't have the luck at times. Porsche screwed up a few times as well with strategy. I think this time it's going to be Porsche's year to really iron out those results, iron out those bad results, get the car on form all throughout the season. The drivers will be on form throughout the season. It's an unchanged lineup as well, which always helps. Pascal Wehrlein and Antonio Felix da Costa going to go at it again. Yeah, Antonio Felix da Costa, I think more consistency, more luck comes his way. Pascal Wehrlein irons out a couple of mistakes here and there, and yeah, I think they've got it. I think they're going to be really, really well. Regular race victories, regular podiums for them, and anything outside the top 5, top 6 area in the points at the end of the race for both cars will be classed as nothing other than disappointing. So yeah, for me personally, Porsche, short and sweet for me really. Unchanged lineup, a team that's going forward, it's going places, a little bit more consistency from the team side, a little bit more consistency from the driver's side, and they've got it. They're going to be really, really strong, and I think they're going to finish runner-up this season. Will one of the drivers take the title? I don't think so, but I think realistically they could go in the final few races with championship potential, championship contention. I certainly think that the overall team's championship will go down to the wire as well, but let's wait and see. But for now, yeah, Porsche, 2nd place in the standings. Wehrlein will do well, Da Costa will do well, the team will do well, but it just won't be enough to beat the winners. And of course, finishing 1st place, it's going to be Jaguar. It has to be. The only team I've not mentioned it is, of course, Jaguar Racing. They have been a team that have been on the up since they debuted in Season 3, didn't they, into Formula E? You know, each year they've been chipping away. They've been mathematically possible with a few rounds to go. Then they've been in mathematical championship contention at the final round. Mitch Evans, of course, a few seasons ago, that race where Jake Dennis didn't want to win the championship, Mortara didn't want to win the championship, Mitch Evans didn't want to win it either. Well, certainly his car didn't when it expired at the start line. You know, Mitch Evans has been formidable in Formula E, he really has, and as mentioned with Sam Bird when I was talking about McLaren there, had he not been punted off by his teammate twice last season, it'd have been a hell of a lot closer in the championship standings come the end of the season. Maybe, just maybe, they would have spurred him on and given him that more of a chance in the final few races. It still went down to a worthy driver in the end, of course, Jake Dennis, but yeah, you know, just those 2 incidents alone for Mitch Evans were enough to knock him out the standings. This season that won't happen. He's got a class teammate alongside him, Nick Cassidy, the driver that was also challenging for the title in the final rounds, and he had contact with his teammate as well, Buemi pulling a silly move. It's silly, isn't it? It's ridiculous. So yeah, both drivers that are in this Jaguar squad now could have both been world champions had it not been for their teammates at times, or had it not been for a car expiring as well, of course. Both drivers are hungry. Both drivers are hungry. Both drivers are feisty Kiwis that know each other extremely well. You know, the Jaguar squad is a hungry team that have been so close for so many years now. It's got to be their time with this driver lineup now. It's got to be their opportunity to shine. And I really do feel like it is going to be advantage Jaguar going into 2024. They are going to be the team to beat. They're going to be the drivers to beat. It's going to be victory after victory after victory, podium after podium after podium. I really do feel like this is Jaguar's season. And if it doesn't come off for either driver or for team, then wow, something has gone drastically wrong. So there we have it then, guys. Those were my predictions of the Formula E 2024 Constructors Championship come the end of the season. Let me know down in the comment section below, where would you place the teams? Do you agree with my lineup? Would you move any slightly? Would you drastically change up the grid? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, much love.